This video tutorial is on the principles of data collection, and there are three main principles that help you to get a good sample that's representative of the entire population. These principles are called randomization, replication, and control. And on this page we're going to talk about randomization. Now, randomization is the process of choosing a random sample of the population, and a random sample means that everyone in the population has the same chance of being selected. Now, it's important when you're performing experiments with a number of different groups because it helps to minimize the differences that exist between the groups. But as you will see when we talk about sampling techniques, simple random sampling isn't always the best approach. Number two is replication. And replication is repeating an experiment over and over until you get enough of the population sampled so you reduce bias and your sample is representative of the population. In the example here, it says if you wish to study the size of a fish in a lake, you don't just catch and weigh one of them. You will repeat that experiment over and over again because no matter what the population is, there's variability built in. Whether it's fish in a lake, they're not all the same. Whether it's people, they're not all the same. So there's always variation built into any population. So that's why you need to replicate the experiment a number of times until it's large enough that the sample represents the population. Last one here, control, is the way to make sure that the effects that you see in your experiment come from just the one particular factor you're trying to study. And in a controlled experiment, two virtually identical experiments are conducted. In one of them, a certain factor is being tested or applied, while in the second group, they don't actually, the second group is the control group, and that factor is not being tested against them, and they wouldn't know. So the second group is referred to as a control group because they control the effects of any other variables that aren't being studied. See, it's in a good survey or experiment, you want to be testing one particular variable. And actually, I'm going to continue this discussion on the last page with an example about drug testing. And by drug testing, I don't mean testing for banned substances with Olympic athletes. I'm talking about a medical researcher testing to see whether a new drug works or not, or how well it works. So let's say you're testing a new drug. It's really important to very, very carefully verify that the effects of the drug are produced only by the drug itself and are not due to, for example, differences in people's diets or whether they smoke or not, or their gender or their race and so on. So you want to know whether the drug is the only thing that's affecting some particular changes. Now, this verification is achieved by comparing two identical groups of patients. One particular group will receive the drug, while the second, the control group, receives some non-active substance, and we call that a placebo. So, and you would generally want both these groups to be the same size. So one is actually getting a drug, but they don't know whether they're getting the drug or a placebo, and then the control group are not getting the drug at all. They're only getting the placebo, and again, they don't know whether they're actually getting the placebo or not. Only the people who are conducting this experiment, this medical experiment, would actually know who's getting the drug or not, so that they can determine whether the drug is actually working or not, is doing what it's supposed to do or not. So because the patients don't know whether they're getting the actual drug or a placebo, they can't bias their responses. For example, if you knew that you were getting the drug and you really thought that it should work, then maybe it's actually going to work better. If you knew you weren't getting the drug, then you could bias the response because you know you're not actually getting the drug, so you might say, well, I know I'm not supposed to be getting it better anyway. So this type of experiment is the best way to isolate the effects of that particular drug. And that's the end of the tutorial.